Let's start live stream. Okay, this is live stream.
红唇无有，
哦，put
没有在红唇无有，R 是吗？R 一 R 二 ，A 等 P 等于 R 一减 R 二，等 P 二等于，好了，P 二等于什么？That's fine。那个formula 要给我记，formula 你要给有点麻烦了。
講到中途33 56秒。
就係又俾人會嘅。
5分鐘瞓覺，呢啲 stream 嚟嘅嘛。OK，5分鐘瞓覺。5分鐘啊，5分鐘，5分鐘。5 minute， 5 minute。哇，咁少嘅？5 minute。咁少嘅嚟。
零啊，一刮失二等於一，咁一刮失二也等於一，做到這個一等於二也等於一，我的 break 接着玩咯。formula 的 RS 等於一減6隻一等於的二，與我的多少個解？
呢個係咪 Apple Store shot on Apple？
120.9643转个 break， calculate 不了吗？有一个 break 啊。Let's go。有冇先時間做嘅第三題？證明呢個第三題係試過中未中？第三題嘅。Simple interest 6 half yearly。 明白这样子。Oh shit. Oh.
邊個嚟嘅？邊個嚟嘅嗰個？瞓覺嘅人，哥哥嚟㗎。
假啦，你都唔會醒噶啦。你整到阿蘭錯咗，你一定唔會醒嘅，我同你講。3分鐘咯，再調。等一睡下去就不醒來啊，過晚上才醒來。不要後悔啊，到時候。別吵了，亂讀啊！吵到半死。
哎。
係啊，
想把记忆留给我，那吃钱尽量 做咗 tutorial 8。tutorial 8係呢個我諗好難嘅。咩 inventory card 哦，tutorial 9中慢，是個神話出來了。
Year-end adjustments are accounting entries that we do at the end of the year. Why we call them year-end.
係咩？你點樣
To
肯定嗰間
update
係
our account balances before we prepare our financial statement. So we want our financial statement to be accurate, to contain relevant.
Hello mother，冇 double A battery，仲有 triple A。
information and to be reliable so that people who read our financial
Yeah
statements
lah. 111。
can get an accurate picture of how our business performs and what is our business's financial position so that they can make
triple A
good decisions.
冇睇到。
Now, in order to make sure that our financial statements are accurate, are reliable, contain relevant information, before we prepare our financial statement, we must make sure that we update all our accounts. Update for what? We have to update to make sure our financial statements record all revenues earned during the period, to make sure that we have recorded all expenses incurred, and to make sure that all our assets and liabilities have accurate balances. So why do we need to update at the end of the year?
account 就這樣，要 balance 準準。
Year-end adjustments are made on the last day of the year. So if our financial year end is on 30th of June, we make these year-end adjusting entries dated 30th. We make them on the last day of the year. But why do we make these adjustments? Why aren't our accounts updated all the time? So the thing is, we don't record all transactions all the time. One example is depreciation. We only record depreciation expense at the end of the year. We don't record depreciation expense every day.
唔知係咪真係好睇？
Another example is that we don't record salaries expense every day. We only
係喎，晒圖咧。
record salaries expense at the time we pay our employees.
我打機咪用。
We don't record our electricity expense every day either. We only record at the time we pay our electric bill. So there are a lot of things, revenues, expenses, assets and liabilities that are not updated at the end of the year. So we have to make this year-end adjustment to update all our revenues, expenses, assets and liabilities at the end of the year so that we can prepare our financial statement. So that's the purpose of year-end. At the end of the year, we have to check all our accounts. What are we checking for? We are checking to make sure that we have recognized only those revenues that we have actually earned during the year. We have recognized or recorded only the expenses that we have incurred during the year. And we have to make sure that all our assets and liability balances are up to date. So we have to check for these things. Now, it looks like there's a lot of things to check, but basically we only check for 4 things. At the end of the year, we look for these 4 things. What are they? Accrued expenses, prepaid expenses, accrued revenue, and income received in advance, also known as unearned revenue.
什麼是 accrued ACCURED accurate
So these are the 4 things we check for. And if we find these 4 things, we have to make a journal entry in our general journal to update our accounts. So we look for these 4 things at the end of the year and make 4 different types of year-end adjustments. Okay, 4 different types of year-end adjustments. One type is for accrued expenses, to record accrued expenses. The second type is to record prepaid expenses. The third type is to record accrued revenue. The fourth type is to record any income received in advance. Then we make a double entry in the general journal to update our account for these 4 things. Now, every time we make an adjusting entry, the year-end adjustment, our entry will involve an expense or a revenue account. So you debit or credit either a revenue account or an expense account. So every year-end adjustment must debit or credit either a revenue account or an expense account. Also, every year-end adjusting entry, you must debit or credit either an asset or a liability account. In particular, you debit or credit either a current asset or a current liability account. So every adjusting entry will involve one, either revenue or expense account. Number two, you debit or credit either current asset or current liability.
SPL 同埋 FFP 嗰度都要掂到咯。
What you are doing, right? So if you understand what we are doing in our tutorial,
3 sheet total.
this question
哇，30幾分鐘嗰度。
哇！呢一題我真係真唔中。
answers to prepare the statement of profit or loss for the year ended 31 August year 2 and the statement of financial position as at that date. There's a mistake in your question. Your question says prepare extracts of. No, we are not going to prepare extracts of. We are going to prepare the whole statement. So just cut out these two words, extracts of. We are preparing the entire statement. The trial balance for Smith as at 31 August year 2, we don't know what year this is, it's called year 2, is as follows. Now this trial balance contains all your general ledger account balances before we have done any year-end adjustment. So these are the balances before we update them. Now we have to update all these balances first before we can prepare our financial statement. The information for us to update the accounts are given here. There's a list of 6 items here, right? So we're going to look through these items one by one and then update our account balances in the trial balance. Now I'm going to show you how you can do this in an exam, right? We're going to do the working in the question paper. We're going to write the working in the question paper, but you are not going to pass up the question paper. Nobody's going to mark the question paper. We will then transfer all this working into our answer. Okay, so I'll show you a shortcut how to do the working and show it the working in your answer. Now the first item at 31 August year 2, there was 1 inventory valued at 31 August year 2 at cost prices of 9,100 ringgit. Now if you look at the inventory balance in your trial balance, it is at 1st September brought down. So the inventory balance is outdated. This is the opening balance. We are using the periodic inventory system where our inventory account is never updated. We only update our inventory account at the end of the year after we have counted our stock. So after we have counted our stock, we have determined the inventory we have at the end of the year is 9,100 ringgit. So now you have to do an entry to update this balance from 8,200 update to 9,100 ringgit. Now you don't need to know the double entry, debit one, credit one to update. You don't need to know. Okay, we are going to show this in the statement of profit or loss as well as in the statement of financial position afterwards. So we'll come back to this one. We'll leave this one first and come back to it afterwards. Number 2, rent of 400 ringgit not yet paid. Now rent not yet paid means you have incurred the rent, but you haven't paid your landlord. You owe your landlord 400 ringgit.
Yes.
So this is an example of an accrued expense. Accrued expense. Expenses incurred during the year, but not yet paid. Not yet paid means also you haven't recorded it. Usually we record the rent at the time you pay. Okay, if you haven't paid, we haven't recorded it. Now, in accrual accounting, even if you haven't paid you an expense, you must still record it. So this expense must be recorded. This is an accrued expense. We call it accrued rent. That means this we have to update our rent account here. 4,400 ringgit is what we
幾
have
慘
already
冇
paid during the
題
year.
目就
We have to
係
add another 400 ringgit which we have incurred but not yet paid. So we do this working here. It takes time. You can draw a T account and you do the working, but don't need same time do the working like this. Now this accrued rent is rent that you owe your landlord. So this is a current liability. So I'm going to put CL here. Afterwards, when I come back, I can see CL current liability. It makes it easier for me. Okay, so I've updated what I've increased my rent expense by 400 ringgit, and I also have rent payable. This is also known as rent payable, 400 ringgit. Number 3, insurance inclusive of 300 ringgit paid in advance. Paid in advance means you pay for next year's insurance expense. If you pay for next year, you cannot count it as this year's insurance expense, right? So if you look at insurance 1,600, it includes 300 ringgit that you pay for next year. Next year you cannot count this year, so you have to take out 300 ringgit. This will go to next year's insurance expense. So
prepaid 同埋 in advance 什麼好啊 ？prepaid 同埋 in advance
here's insurance expense is only 1,300 ringgit.
一個
Now this insurance paid in advance is
in advance
advance
insurance inclusive for insurance 係俾啊 debit prepaid 意思咯。
prepaid expense. Prepaid expense. So in the prepaid expense, we record it as an asset. It's a current asset. We call this prepaid insurance. Now prepaid insurance is current asset, so I label it CA. Okay. Why I put CA here? Because it will help me afterwards to identify when I prepare the statement of financial position. So 300 ringgit paid for next year, you have to take it out of this year's expense. This will go into next year's expense. Number 4, commission of 350 ringgit not yet received for the month of August. Now commission is a revenue, it's not yet received. So you have earned the commission, but people have not paid you yet. Even though you haven't received the money, it is still revenue. You must still record the revenue. So this is what we call accrued revenue. Revenue earned during the year but not yet received. We still have to record it. We record by recognizing the revenue, but you also recognize a receivable. Okay, receivable because we have a revenue receivable. So what do we call this? We call it commission receivable. Accrued revenue, commission receivable. If you want, you can also call it accrued commission. Okay, accrued commission. Now this is a current asset. The receivable is a current asset. Oh, sorry, wrong spelling. It's commission receivable, not received. Receivable. Here, we have recorded commission 3,650 ringgit. This is how much you have received during the year. You must add another 350 ringgit receivable. 3,650 ringgit already received and recorded. Plus another 350 ringgit
inclusive
earned,
month
but
deposit
not yet received, not yet recorded. Number 5, 15 months rental was received, which includes 3 months deposit. So if you look at this rental received, 6,000 ringgit, this is a revenue. 6,000 ringgit is for 15 months rental. Now you have only 12 months in a year, right? So you cannot recognize more than 12 months rent revenue. If people pay you 15 months rent, what does that mean? They have prepaid 3 months for next year's rent as well. So your rent revenue, you must only record 12 months rent revenue. Okay? 3 months is for next year you count as next year's revenue. Go to the next year, take out 3 months. Take out 3 months here. How much is a 3 months rent? You have to calculate like this, 6,000, show the calculation, times 3 over 15, not 12, huh? Because 6,000 ringgit is 15 months revenue. So 3 months out of 15 is actually next year's rent revenue. So this year, first one is 6,000 minus 1,200 here.
calculate
Now, the 3 months that is actually next year's revenue, you collected the money, is called income received in advance. Income received in advance is cash received in the current year for revenue that was not yet earned. So you have received 3 months rent, you haven't earned it yet. So you recognize a liability, all right? You owe people. When you take money from people, but you haven't given them anything, you owe them. It's a liability. We call it, let's call it rental received in advance. So you have taken people's money, but you haven't given them. So this one, you recognize a liability of 1,200 ringgit, and you have to take this 1,200 ringgit out of your current revenue. So you only recognize 12 months rent revenue. Number 6, the motor vehicle is to be depreciated at 20% at cost, which amounts to 1,800 ringgit. Now, this is depreciation. Depreciation is actually a year-end adjustment. When you record depreciation at the end of the year, it is a year-end adjustment. Now, the calculation is already done for you, 1,800 ringgit. You don't have to calculate it. If you want to calculate it, it's 9,000 ringgit cost times 20%. Which is equal to 1,800. So this 1,800 is the depreciation expense for your motor vehicle. Now, how do you repeat the depreciation? You must add another 1,800 here. Okay, so you have to update your accumulated depreciation account. This is the last year-end adjustments that we have to make. Now we are ready to prepare our financial statement. We start with the statement of profit and loss. Remember, when you prepare your financial statements, make sure you put the name of the business or the name of the owner, the name of the statement, and the date. So the date is for the year ended 31 August, year 2. Now we always start with sales, right? We start with sales first. Sales is given here as 40,900 ringgit.
Okay, correction tip and
其實真係我帶 correction tip 去咩？
冇咗啦 correction tip。生產者先。
真的需要咩 correction tip？
我需要。我講考試唔用到啦。考試唔用到，你又睇到個一字過。
老師新的紙，老師新的紙。
For sales, I usually also check whether I have any sales returns. Do I have any returns inwards? Did the customer return anything? So we look for returns inwards here. There's no returns inwards. If you have returns inwards, you minus returns inwards here to give you your net sales. So after sales, we calculate cost of goods sold. We start with opening inventory. How much is the opening inventory? Is given in the trial balance 8,200. Now make sure you remember.
Then the Audi.
Remember, every time we take a number and put it in our financial statement, I put a tick there. This will help me to check later on. Then I add purchases. So I already know what to put into the statement. I just look for the information in the trial balance. Purchases is given here as 26,000 ringgit. Now remember, purchases may also include other costs. We may have carriage inwards. We may have some wages that we need to add to our purchases. We may have some insurance. We may have some maybe import duties. So you have to look at any other costs related to purchases, like carriage inwards, insurance on the inventories purchase, and so on. If you check here, there are no other costs related to purchases. So just purchases. You add the purchases and the opening inventory. This gives us cost of goods available for sale. This is called cost of goods available for sale.
再减那个什么
To the cost of goods available for sale, you then deduct your closing inventory. Now, closing inventories means inventories as at 31 August year 2. This is given in note number 1 here, 9,100 ringgit. Okay, this is your closing inventories balance. 100 ringgit, cost of goods sold. Now we're going to deduct cost of goods sold from sale, so put a bracket around the number to show that you're minusing this figure.
This is a
Sales
gross
minus cost of goods
profit.
sold gives us. After the gross profit figure, we look for any other income. Do we have any other income here?
Yes.
All income has a credit balances, so you just look at the credit column. Don't look at the debit column because revenue always has credit balance. Now the first thing I see is commission receipt. This is an income. So I have commission receipt. I add here other income. The first one is commissions received. Now I have to show the working. Remember, your working that you write in the question paper, nobody's going to see. So you have to show the working in your answer. So the easiest way to show the working is to write it in the statement itself. Of course, you can show the working down here as a note, but it doesn't matter whether you show in a note below or you show inside here, you get the same marks. Okay, your examiner will mark this one. ringgit. The next revenue I see is rental receipt. This one. So you have to show the working here. The next revenue I see is rental receipt.
1、2、3、4，第一次。
ringgit. The next revenue I see is rental receipt. I just call it rental receipt. The working is 6,000 ringgit already received, minus this amount not yet received. So this gives me 4,800 ringgit. I go down here, there's no more revenue. Now don't forget, you also have to look at the additional information here. No other revenue, but there's another expense here. So that's all the other revenue I have. Sum them up, you get 8,800 ringgit. Add it to your gross profit, give us 24,600 ringgit total income. Now after your total income, you deduct all your expenses. We have to go back to the trial balance and look for expenses. All expenses will have debit balances. So you just look down the debit column. As usual, all those numbers that we have already ticked, no need to look. Okay, you only look at those numbers that don't have a tick yet. Now the first expense I see is rent. Now you have to show the working. Total rent is 4,400 ringgit plus 400 ringgit accrued rent. That gives us 4,800 ringgit. Next expense I see is insurance. The amount is 1,600 minus 300 ringgit prepaid for next year. So this year's insurance expense is 1,300 ringgit. Going down the list, I have salaries. No calculation required, 9,990 ringgit. Motivated to asset, trade receivable to asset, bank asset, going. Now don't forget to look down here. Now I look down here, I have a depreciation expense, 1,800 ringgit. Now you don't have to show the working because the number is already calculated for you in the question. If there's no calculation, there's no answer, then you're working because the number is already calculated. Now you don't have to show the working because the number is already calculated for you in the question. If there's no calculation, there's no answer, then you have to show the calculation. Right now you don't have to show the calculation because it's already given in the question. So this is the last item here. So what I do is I look from the top to the bottom, so I don't miss, make sure I don't miss anything. We can now total up all our expenses to give us 17,890 ringgit. Now we're going to deduct this out of our total income to give us 6,710 ringgit. A positive figure shows that we have a net profit for the year.
Net present value. Net profit. Net present value.
After we have prepared our statement of profit or loss, we can now prepare our statement of financial position. We also call it balance sheet. And the date is as at 31 August year 2. Now please follow the format I showed you earlier. That means we start with non-current assets. We have only one non-current asset in this question, which is
Hello.
we have only one. Now it says here at cost, but you don't write down in this question, which is because all this rent is Don't forget accumulated depreciation less accumulated depreciation. Now the accumulated depreciation amount has been updated. So put a mark here. Opening balance 1,200 ringgit plus depreciation for this year. 3,000 ringgit altogether. Our net book value is 6,000 ringgit. This is the total non-current assets. Next, we have current assets. Remember, current assets must be in a certain order. We start with inventories. The inventories must be as at 31 August. Closing inventories for the year. Closing inventories for the year is given in here in the note number 1 here. 9,100 ringgit. Now, after inventories, you have trade receivable. So I already know what comes next. Trade receivables is given in the trial balance as 1,160 ringgit. Now, as usual, when you do trade receivables, always look for allowance for doubtful debts. Do we have allowance for doubtful debts? Don't have. Just trade receivable. If you have allowance for doubtful debt, you will put a first column here. Put trade receivables, less allowance for doubtful debt, then the net trade receivables over here. Now, after trade receivables, we look for any other receivables. From the trial balance, we have only one receivable, trade receivable. And then if you look down here, we have two other current assets. Two current assets here. One of it is another receivable, commissions receivable, 350 ringgit. So I'm going to put commissions receivable here. I have another current asset which is a prepaid insurance, 300 ringgit. So you can see how by labeling CA or CL, it makes it so easy for me to look for current assets. So the order of current assets is inventories come first, followed by trade receivable, then other receivable, then your prepaid expenses, prepayment. You could have prepaid insurance, prepaid rent, any prepaid expense. Finally, after that, bank and cash. Now we have bank with a balance of 1,500 ringgit, but no cash, only bank. Now this is the last one. So we look down after this, no more current assets. Total up to give us our total current assets. $12,410 ringgit. Add to your total non-current assets to give us 18,410 ringgit. This is labeled, please remember to label this as total assets. After assets, we now list down our equity account, equity. We're going to calculate our closing equity or ending equity. We start with capital at the beginning of the year, opening capital, which is capital as at 1 September, year 1. So this is our opening capital here. Capital at 1 September brought down year 2. Okay, year 2. Okay, we call it year 2. I thought the previous year is year 1, isn't it? 1 September, year 1. Let's call it year 2. The opening capital balance is 19,700 again. We made a profit, so to this capital, we add our net profit for the year. The net profit was 6,710 ringgit. So our capital is increased by the net profit to 26,410 ringgit. But we also had drawings. Total drawings for the year was 11,700 ringgit. Drawings will reduce our capital. So if you deduct drawings, we end up with 14,710 ringgit closing capital balance. Finally, we list down all our liabilities. We start with non-current liabilities. So our capital is our opening capital here at the beginning. Now this is 500 ringgit, but no cash, only bank.
喂，
做咩一定要跟自己嘅嘢咧？
Now this is the last one. So we look down after this, no more current assets. Total up to give us our total current assets. $12,410 ringgit. Add to your total non-current assets to give us 18,000. 12,410 ringgit. Add to your total non-current assets to give us 18,410 ringgit. This is labeled, please remember to label this as total assets. After assets, we now list down our equity account. Equity.
50分
We're
鐘
going to
有
calculate
要
our
最快。
closing equity or ending capital. We start with capital at the beginning of the year, opening capital, which is capital as at 1 September,
Come on, big W 啊！
year 1. So this is our opening capital here. Capital at 1 September brought down year 2. Okay, year 2.
唔係啊，52分鐘。
Yeah, call it year 2. So at 1 September, year 2. Okay, year 2. Yeah, we call it year 2. So the previous year is year 1. 1 September, year 1. Let's call it year 2.
呢個容易啊。October
The opening capital balance is 19,700. We made a profit, so to this capital we had our net profit for the year. The net profit was 6,710 ringgit. So our capital is increased by the net profit to 26,410 ringgit. But we also had drawing, total drawing to 26,410 ringgit. But we also had drawing. Total drawings for the year was 11,700 ringgit. Drawings will reduce our capital. So if you deduct drawings, we end up with 14,710 ringgit closing capital balance. Finally, we list down all our liabilities. We start with non-current liabilities. So you look at the trial balance, credit side, liabilities. So you look at the trial balance, credit side, ignore all this with a tick. We have one. This is trade payables, but trade payables is a current liability. No more. Current liability, current liability. So we don't have any non-current liability. We only have current liability. Starting with trade payable. Now after trade payables, there are no more liabilities in the trial balance. But if you look down here, I can see straight away two other current liabilities. The first one is accrued rent or rent payable. You can call this rent payable. The next one is rental received in advance. Now how much is it? It is this amount. Okay, rental received in advance. So I put a tick here first. Minus 6,000 times 3 over 15. That gives us 1,200 ringgit. And that is the last current liability. We have no other liabilities. So again, I've looked from the top here, all our current liabilities.
Total current liability.
And it totals 3,700 ringgit. So this is a total liability. Okay, that's all the liabilities we have. Add the total liabilities to equity. and we get 18,410 ringgit. Please remember to label this figure as total liabilities and equity. Now check that your total liabilities and equity is equals to your total assets. They must be the same. What if your total liabilities and equity is not equals to your total assets? That means you have made some mistake somewhere and you have to look for the mistake and correct the mistake. Now, how do you look for the mistake? The first thing I would do is I check all my calculation again to make sure I've added everything correctly. Now, if I added everything correctly, still doesn't balance, I check the calculation in my statement of profit or loss. Make sure the net profit figure is calculated correctly. If I check all the addition here, all correct, then I go further and check here. I check that every number here must have a tick. I check to make sure I haven't missed anything. If I see any number without a tick, that means I have forgotten to put that number in the financial statement. Now, if every number has a tick, your balance sheet still doesn't balance. The next thing I do is to check my year-end adjustment. Did I do my year-end adjustments correctly? Maybe instead of minus 300, I plus 300. Okay, then that may be the mistake. If I correct here, then my balance sheet may balance. So that is how you check for mistakes systematically.
Three minutes. Whoa. 我咩？
冇嘢。
冇錯啊。OK，end stream，拜拜。